All right, so today's guest is a client, a mentor, and honestly, Bloom's first client. His name's Dan. We're kicking off season 2, episode 1 with a bang. Dan talks a ton about his journey and finding success with roofing and construction and eventually starting his own company, MNRC. Talks a little bit about mindset and leadership roles and why he is here and his purpose, which is super, super powerful. And we tie the whole thing together with just a great conversation around all of those great topics. So we got a great one here for you. Check it out. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Bloom Podcast, episode 1 of season 2. We have a bunch of new things going for you guys. There's a new thumbnail, a new intro you probably noticed. So super excited to have our very first guest of season 2 on, Dan Lillestol.
I'm excited.
Yeah. And did I say that right? Dan Lillestol?
You know, I think that's spot on.
All right.
You're like a natural.
Cool. Well, Dan, super excited to have you on the podcast. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but I think, one of the biggest things when I was reflecting on like what we would talk about, I was like, Dan has been a pivotal part of Bloom since the start. Like, I remember driving home and heading home and being like so sad when I let go of my last job to go full time. And then not even a week later, I met you at a coffee shop. And
that was a weekend.
Yeah, it was like a week in. I met you at a coffee shop, and I honestly can say like it changed my life. It was like the first part of the trajectory of Bloom.
Dude, that's so cool.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. It's been awesome connecting with you.
Yeah.
It's been really cool watching your journey and just seeing the evolution of the success that you're having. I'm excited for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we'll dive into that story a little bit later because I want to hear it from your perspective. Because I know how I remember it. But Dan, before we get started, I think the biggest thing is tell us about you, right? Like, who is Dan? Like, if you get an Uber driver and the Uber driver says, what do you do for a living? What would you tell them?
Wow. I think I would tell them that I run a construction company that just happens to build roofs. But what I'm really passionate about is the empowerment and transformation of people's lives that are within that company.
And that is the cherry on top, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like transforming people's lives. Now I want to know more.
Right.
Now there's like tangibility to what you do and a reason and a purpose behind it.
That's right.
And that's super valuable. And I know who you worked with to get all that figured out.
Yeah.
So,
it was a journey too.
Yeah. But great. Yeah. Super, super simple. Well, I have just, we want to start off these podcasts. We want the people to get to know you, right? So now they know you exist to transform lives, right? So now we have a rapid fire segment. There's like 9 questions on here. We're going to rattle through those. Then we're going to get into the stuff.
All right, let's go.
The real stuff.
I'm excited. So, rapid fire.
Rapid fire. I need quick answers. Whatever comes to your mind right away.
All right, whatever comes up, comes out.
So, Dan, who makes sure you always leave the house looking so fly? Because you always look fly.
Hey, I'm just going to give a shout out to my friends at March and Patrick 3 and Nordstrom. they get the heavy lift, but I just put it together. I buy right off the mannequin.
There it is. I love it. Where did you grow up?
Brooklyn Center.
Oh, okay. So in Minnesota.
Yep.
Cool. At what age did you start your first business?
So I think the very first business was some buddies of mine. We put a little leaflet together and we started mowing lawns. That was like the first business, right? No LLC or S Corp going on then. But then the next business I had was a glass blowing company.
Really?
That was early. It was the late 90s.
Okay, and you know how to blow glass still to this day?
Lamp working they call it. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was my first business. It was cool though. So what we did is, it started off. I just wanted to make the art. Right. Mm-hmm. And I quickly found that I enjoyed that process and that there was a marketplace for it. And so I just went all in. I actually quit my furniture job, went all in on just making glass. And I needed a place to retail it. So I opened up a shop. And as that evolved. I eventually opened up a place in Northeast Minneapolis, like where I could rent the studio, or I rented a studio space for other artists, sold them raw materials and purchased their finished product, and then put it on a website or sold it in the retail shop.
I had no idea that actually happened. And what year was this?
Shoot, I can't remember now. Probably like 2000 to 2002.
Okay.
It was short-lived.
Yeah. Okay.
It was short-lived. Yeah.
Okay. But it sounds like you went to you shot for the moon. Sounds like you had the studio and everything.
Yep.
What was the ultimate demise of it?
You know, the ultimate demise was actually my, it was drugs and alcohol, actually. Yeah. So I had a problem at that point in my life with keeping things on the tracks. And I just couldn't control that, and the business suffered as a result.
Copy.
Yeah.
Well, we might get into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
I love that you brought that up, because I myself have only heard tidbits from you, but haven't really got a ton of that story there. So, super cool to know. What motivates you, Dan?
Wow. Dude, it depends on like a daily basis, right? But ultimately, I think I just like wake up like excited to do something, right? To build something, to create something. And I think that energy is within me, and it just got to come out. So I'm motivated and inspired by a lot of things. I find motivation in seeing things come to fruition, right? Watching an idea kind of come to life, and then watching it take root and just grow and evolve into what it is. And that really inspires and motivates me.
Yeah, that's super powerful, man. I think you always have that energy that's like contagious, or so. I don't know, whenever I'm around you, I'm just like, my mind starts thinking bigger, and I start getting more excited about things.
Let's think big.
Yeah. Name one thing that has changed your life exponentially. Like, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Sure. Getting sober.
It's a good answer. How many Rolexes have you given away?
I have no idea. A lot. I about a dozen.
About a dozen Rolexes.
At least a dozen, yeah.
That was mind blowing, and I don't know if we'll even talk about that, but that was mind blowing. The first event I shot for you guys, I was like, wow, you're a very, very giving guy, and I think that's super, super powerful. Last question: if you need a roof, if someone needs a roof, who should they call?
Oh, they should call MNRC.
There it is. There it is. Well, yeah. So now I feel like now the people have a little background on you, Dan, and I want to jump into just like how we met, the start of how we met, and maybe get into some kind of philosophies on business and leadership, and even like just little things. Like I think there's a lot of people. I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and he was explaining to me that he was like, he's been at this job that he doesn't like, and he was saying how, he feels like he's kind of at like a dead end, and he doesn't know where to go, and he just turned 27, and he's starting to feel like has no time left and stuff like that. And I'm like, there is so much time left. And like, I think you are a testament to that, because you have found success in your lives in many different ways, but I feel like now you have a lot clearer vision than you've had before.
For sure.
And I could be wrong.
I want to talk to your buddy.
Yeah, for real. You need I did sell him. I said, dude, you can knock doors, man.
Dude, let's have a coffee.
Yeah, for real. But okay, so speaking of coffee, tell me when we first met, what happened in your eyes? Because I think my side of the story is probably a little bit more intense than yours.
Okay. All right. Well, first of all, that was an incredible segue from coffee to this. So where were we at? We were at Spy House over here in the North Loop, right?
Yep.
And so I was on the phone, and I'm talking to a guy, and he needed a draw, right? He had spent his money. And this was the winter month, spring. I think it was like early spring, right? Maybe it was 2021 or something.
Yeah.
And it's not uncommon for people to spend through cash. They need a draw, and so he was asking for money, and he's got a family, right? I knew his background. He had worked a season with me already, but he had already kind of tapped out, right? He had overextended his draw capacity, right?
Yeah.
But he was asking for exception, and during that conversation I was having with him, I was trying to be firm but fair, right? And I knew there's a part of me that kind of has a hard time saying no, right? The guy's got a family, this and that. But I wanted him to know too that there was more in him than he put out in the season before. And if he just stays on path and he goes harder, and he works more diligently towards his goals that he could get further. And I told him, I think in that call, that I believed in him, and that because I believed in him, I was going to give him the money.
Yeah. And okay. Yeah. Yep. And then what happened? I popped up on it. Where did I
you were over there in the corner doing something, having coffee.
I was eavesdropping.
You were moved by the conversation.
I was eavesdropping.
Yeah, because I think you came over or something. And I had another buddy I was meeting there. And then we started a chat with you. And from what I recollect, you just told us you were into videography and all that.
Yeah, well, I quit my job like a week before that.
Okay.
Right? To go full-time video. And I remember feeling like I had like nothing. I remember like the first day I woke up and I was like pretty depressed almost, because I was like, wow, like here I am, the bottom of this hill. I don't even know what the top looks like. I have no idea what this feels like. And I was like, I need money more than ever, you know? Like living in the North Loop is not cheap. So I was living in the North Loop because of my last job in proximity to that, which was good, but I was like, wow, I need to figure out a way. I need to get some clients like now. I can't.
You got 2 clients that day.
Yeah, literally. Yeah, you and Zach.
Yep.
And so I remember like hearing you talk, and I don't exactly remember the exact numbers, but you're like, we're going to process you this amount of money, and this is just the start, because next month you're going to make double that. And the month after that, you're going to make double that. And it was like out of like a movie. I was like, wow, this guy, like I could just tell you had this like I just noticed your excitement and your drive and your like compassion for like this person. And I remember being like, I need to talk to this guy no matter what. Like I'm out here, I'm on my own, I'm trying to make money and make videos. And I was like, I need to just talk to this guy somehow or another. And I think crazy. You actually, you talked to me.
Really?
Because I remember hearing you have that conversation. And then I think I was in front of you in line, and I pulled out my wallet or something, and you're like, you got any money in that wallet? And I was like, you said that because I think you had just given the guy the draw. So like, you got any money in that wallet? And I was like, not today, but someday I'll have a lot more in there or something. And then we kept talking. I remember something like that happened. I forget what. And I was kind of, my body language and stuff was probably urging you, or I don't know. I got exactly what I wanted by having you chime in and ask me a question. So I don't know what I did to maybe prompt that or something.
I don't know. Maybe it just happened. Serendipity.
But then, I remember then, we connected. We went and got Crispin Green, and then you were like ready to move forward. And I remember you asked, you kind of put me on my toes right away, because I told you the price to do the video production work, and you were like, cool. Why is it that price? And you like asked me like, why is that price? And it was like just like the second call I've ever had, and I want to land this deal regardless, because it's like the first deal I need. And you asked me why the price wasn't. It definitely like put me on my heels. I was like, wait, well, because we got a factor drive time, and I kind of like pulled something out. But I remember like then thinking through that question and then finding better ways to answer that question next time. So nice. But yeah, that was very like, I don't know, probably to the listener it doesn't sound that like intense, but it was like a very like intense, like I don't want to say do or die time, but like I definitely needed the business.
Dude, you went from 0 to 1. Yeah. Like boom. That's what's so cool too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was I remember it was just, I don't know. I remember it lined up as 0 to 2 really, because then Zach was there, and then Zach actually had me do a bunch of stuff for him that spring. So
yeah, what an incredible story. You have to get him on here.
Yeah.
He is a force in and of himself.
I know. I've talked to him a lot. He seems like he's really, really busy too. Every time we connect, he's saying what's up. So
yeah. Well,
dude, again, thanks for coming on. Funny how there's, both sides of that story there. But who was the first person to give you a chance? Like let's say you were the first person to kind of give me a chance. Who was the first person to give you a chance? Do you remember that?
Like, I remember the house I first roofed.
Okay.
Right. I remember that first roof. I remember the name of the adjuster that paid for the first deal. But the guy that got me into this business, his name's Justin. And I was at home on unemployment because I had a seasonal job at the time. I worked on the roads for a company that my father-in-law owned. And or at that time were to be my future father-in-law.
Yeah.
And I had just done a season with him. And while I never really shied away from hard work, I never really cared what type of work I did. What I knew about that work was that there was some upside to it, right? There was a lot of security to it, and it paid well. But the guys around there, they weren't really inspiring. They weren't motivated. In fact, I oftentimes say they hated their job. They didn't seem to like the job. They didn't seem to like their wife. They didn't seem to like their life. Mm-hmm. Okay? And there was a lot of complaining and moaning. And I had heard many times that we were a byproduct of those we hang out with the most. And I knew that I was spending about 12 to 16 hours a day with these guys, and most of those days ended on a bar stool. And I didn't particularly want to be in that environment, but I know I needed to provide for a family. Mm-hmm. And so I got this phone call one day from a guy named Justin. He says, dude, you should sell roofs. And I said, I don't know anything about them things. He said, you don't need to. You'd be good at it. And I kind of I didn't argue with him, but I was kind of like, so how does this work? Like, who buys a roof, right? Like, who's got that kind of money? And he's like, well, it works like this and it works like that. And I had tons of questions. At the end of that conversation, I think I said something to him to the effect like this, because he had promised that I would make a ton of money, right? Because he was recruiting, right? So his promise was like, oh, you're going to make, oodles of cash. And I said, well, that sounds great. But honestly, I didn't believe him. Mm-hmm. I didn't even think that type of income was possible for a guy that didn't have a college background, didn't have the pedigree that I thought was required to make that type of money. And so I had some limiting self-beliefs at that point, and that were kind of holding me back. But I said to him, I said, I don't even need to make that type of money. If I can just make what I made last year and be home with my family, I'll be happy.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I made the leap. And he was the first person to really get me into this industry or give me a chance. So he reached out, and I've written in some of our literature at MNRC that I don't really remember what he said, but what I remembered most was that he believed I could do it. Yeah. And that was what was pivotal in that conversation.
Yeah. I think a lot of people need that belief, like someone else to believe in them, for them
for sure.
to channel it. Like even my buddy, just turned 27, he's in that.
Dude, life will train, life will beat the hope and inspiration and aspiration out of us.
Yeah.
It's Zig Ziglar says once, there's something that happens to man, and it's the hardening of the attitudes, right? We live in a negative cat kicking world is what he says, right? Mm-hmm. In his talk, See You at the Top, he tells the story, and he asks, who's kicking your cat? But we do need someone to believe in us. We need someone to remind us, because we are in a world that's just barraged with negativity, mm-hmm. right? You can't pick up your phone. You can't turn on the TV. You can't turn on the radio without being exposed to some type of negativity. So, if the mind is a garden, it needs to be tended.
Yeah. And that was the place that you were coming from, mm-hmm. working on the roads, mm-hmm. struggling, and then ending up on the bar stool at the end of the day, and then starting to do roofs. Now, you're doing roofs. The first year, you said your goal was to you said if I can make just as much money as I made last year, but do this, I'd want to do it.
Yeah.
Did you end up doing that?
Well, I ended up doing better.
Yeah.
And what happened was not only did I financially do better, and I actually owe that person who owned that company. His name's Peter Thompson. He's one of the first mentors I've had in this industry, and he showed me what it means to support the people that work for you. He's not a huge company, but he's a neighborhood contractor and more, right? Mm-hmm. He had vast knowledge of construction and just a heart of gold. And Peter, he helped to make sure that I had just enough not to go hungry, but just not too much to take away my hunger. You know what I'm saying?
That's good. That's a tricky balance.
That's a tricky balance, right? And we established that early on. I said, look, I got a wife. She's going to stay home to take care of our newborn son, and I'm going to make sure that I provide for her and him. And he says, well, how much do you need? And I said, I think it's going to be this much. And, as long as I brought in fresh deals, that money was there. But if I stopped working, he was firm but fair. And mm-hmm. he wasn't opposed to saying, no, not this week. So I knew that it wasn't a guarantee, that there was some reciprocity, right? Yeah. I had to bring it. And so I worked every day. And at the end of that season, I had done, significantly better, probably about a little short of twice as well as I wanted to or thought I needed to financially. But what I learned in the process about the industry and about construction was immensely valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so you learned all this value.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the things you learned?
Well, I learned, so I learned the industry itself, right? I learned how to knock doors,
Yep.
how to talk to strangers, how to influence that outcome, right? I understood what the insurance companies were looking for at homes. I developed relationships that proved for years to be longstanding with local insurance adjusters. I learned that the in and outs of the industry on the front end. I learned how to do what's called Xactimate, the estimating software. I learned about ISTAMs that year, and I started taking retail sales classes. And I did a whole bunch more, right? I processed the files. That company was a little... it didn't have a lot of scale to it in the form of processing the back end of jobs. So I was responsible for that. So basically the only thing I didn't do in the life cycle of that job was the initial estimating and the production ordering. But I did everything else. So I almost bookended the deal. And as a result of that, I learned a lot of the intricacies of the entire spectrum of what it takes to build a roof, which is a lot more than just ordering shingles.
Yeah. And for the listener, you know, I think the biggest thing is and that you coach now, and I've seen it 100 times, is like, you're like, I learned how to knock doors. And everyone, like, it sounds so simple, right?
Yeah.
When you can make it sound really simple, but like, that is a very, very self-starting, heavy job to do. You know,
For sure.
It's really hard to drive through a neighborhood and knock on doors and get told no 10 times in a row and keep knocking, right? If you knock 10 doors an hour, you might get told your first hour that it could just be 10 no's. You're like, wow.
Yeah, you
You
might.
know?
Yeah,
But it could be 10
bagel.
yeses. Yeah. So I mean, that's one thing that I think is really interesting. And I think at MNRC, you know, you're saying when you started is you're almost bookending these deals. At MNRC, it's more linear, right? They're only handling a portion of the process because you've built kind of an infrastructure around that. Yeah.
I like to think that our field representatives, their primary purpose, right, is to ensure that the client has an extraordinary experience. And the idea is that they're going to do that through an unmatched communication with that client from beginning to end. And what I tell them is really, you know, the success of every project, the cornerstone of every success of the project is their ability to communicate the client's needs, concerns, worries, whatever, to the organization, and the organization's standards and processes and expectation, or, you know, next steps to the client, right? So they're the main pathway of communication from the client to the company and to the company to the client. Yeah. And if they do that well, you know, there's nothing but 5-star reviews and coming. Speaking of 5-star reviews, you guys have I think I saw you guys have a ton of 5-star reviews. Yeah, I think we're closing in on like 600, but somewhere else is like maybe 800. But we really exploded this year. Yeah, that's really powerful. That's good stuff. Cool, man. Well, I guess continuing on to that story, then you learn how to do the roofing. Yeah, kind of full spectrum, right? And then from there, how long is it from that point until you start your own roofing company? 9 years. 9 years. 9 seasons, yeah. So you came in with 9 years of experience. You started I think that was 2010. I worked with a gentleman, and I started working with two guys who I credit to be just massive mentors of mine in the industry. And I worked with them from 2011 through 2019. Wow. And then 2019, you, John Vale, Gary, and John, and a bunch of others. But end up starting MNRC. And start truly living your purpose of existing to provide people with better life. Yeah, I like that, right? And I think really that this concept of empowerment and transformation of lives actually happened in 2021. I'll tell you that. So I was sitting at a table. Because that's deep. Yeah, so we were in Vegas. We took a bunch of guys to Vegas. It was really exciting. And we saw some UFC fights in Vegas. Who was it? Maybe Connor was fighting someone. Connor and Cowboy. Oh yeah, he got his leg broke. Yeah, that was the fight. Wild times. So we were there, a bunch of us. It was like maybe end of June, July, and in 2021. And we're standing there, and I'm at this table in the back of a restaurant, kind of like a chef's table setting. And there's a bunch of us, and I'm just thinking to myself, right, as I'm talking to the people that are at that table who are having some kind of like first time experiences, right? Like they're in Vegas for the first time. They're going to the UFC for the first time. They're sitting at a chef's table in the back of like a bomb restaurant for the first time, eating some killer steaks.
Some people
right?
go their whole lives without seeing that.
For sure, right? And like, you know, you take a look at the menu, right? You don't have to look at the price tonight. You know, it's on the house. So, and I'm just kind of like looking and I'm having these conversations. And I had this moment of clarity where I stepped back and I just thought, wow, man, this industry that I love so much, right? This insurance restoration industry and this opportunity we have, it just really transforms lives, right? Look at all these people, you know, that are sitting at this table here this year at this very moment. Like, and I knew where they came from, right? To a degree. I knew some of their stories. And I knew that we were there, right there, and we were miles away from where we came from, and figuratively and literally.
Yeah.
And I was inspired. And then when I started working with Glenn over at Apex North, we started doing some work towards why does MNRC exist? And through that work with the other leadership at MNRC, we all talked about what's happened to us. Since first coming into the industry, how we've changed as people personally, how we've changed as people professionally, and how our lives have changed, right? Whether that be materially or from like a mission mindedness. And we all came to a conclusive conclusion that, you know, our lives have been indelibly transformed by the work that we do in this industry. Yeah. And that was the catalyst for MNRC's existence statement, which is to empower and transform lives.
And I would say you're doing that. I mean, I just
thank you.
It's crazy. Like, even when I go to your guys' office and stuff, it's just like people are, you know, not educated. People that probably, you know, on that decision day in high school walked around and, you know, they didn't go to college, right?
Yeah.
And they're told by everyone, you got to go to college to make money,
right?
You know, and they're constantly kind of pushed down or belittled. And some people may have educations that work for you, but
for sure,
I know there's people that don't. And then they come in and they can, you know, make a doctor salary if they're willing to work hard enough. It's just so powerful. And when I go to the office, you know, it's just crazy to just see some of the people that I've known since 2021 when we met, and just watching their lives truly transform before my eyes. Like this guy used to drive a Camry and now he drives a Raptor. You know, it's like, wow, congrats, man. You know, you've worked hard, you know, and
they've earned it for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know, just super, super powerful. And what does that statement mean? What does that statement mean to you in the context of like scaling the business, right? Because as you scale the business, do you feel that you can have as much of an impact on everyone as you could have before?
Oh, no, not in the same way, but possibly yet more.
Because when there's 10 people versus 100 people.
You know, and I think the real work behind that is that there's no that mission, right, to empower and transform lives. It just becomes, when every new person in leadership comes on, that mission takes on enhanced flavor, but doesn't get weaker, right? It doesn't get diluted. It gets distilled into a raw or pure form with each person picking it up. Like there's you know, my work today, it's mission, vision, and values, and I try to stay out of the way, and I know I make mistakes, but you know, the nuts and bolts of the business isn't really what I'm working on these days, but I do really want to be able to connect with the people. But as MNRC scales and gets larger and larger and larger, and there's more people, you know, I have the privilege, the opportunity, ultimately the responsibility to find leadership that can carry that same mission forward and really, you know, not just know it, but like live it from the heart, right? Yeah. And I was once told the longest journey a man makes is from his head to his heart. And so what I hope at MNRC is our leadership speaks the language of the heart, right? Because a lot of times people come into work and like, man, a lot of times we just go through life up here. Right, this is where we stay.
Way too much. I catch myself every day.
Every day, right? We're here, but like, and we pass each other by, and you know, it's like we're living in a dream, right? Sometimes we're not even we're asleep,
Yeah.
And I've had some coaches and mentors that have told me, that when you can connect with people on a deep and meaningful level and build a relationship established on trust, and that trust will foster an entirely different relationship that can go places that a normal one wouldn't, right? Yeah. And so it's important that MNRC's leadership understands that mission is critical, right? We got to get past those layers of defense mechanisms that we have all built up, those layers of self-doubt that have built up, those layers of things that are preventing us from discovering what's within us, and help people uncover and discover that. And so I think of our leadership not as managers, right? Yeah. Their title might be sales manager, but I think they're coaches, guides, and advisors to help people discover what's within them. And once they discover that, put it to work.
Yeah. And you talk about you're saying the deeper connection, right? And you say people, I forget exactly what you said, but you said something about like you have better relationships with people when you can have a deeper emotional connection with them.
For sure.
Obviously, I mean, that makes sense. How do you get that? Because I've had a lot of leaders in my life, some of which were all up here, up in the head.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get, stay on their good side, just, stay out of their way, make sure I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. And then I've had like deep emotional connections with leaders where it's like, I'll sleep at this office. I will never lie to you. Like very, very like strong, like trusted relationships. And I like to think as a leader for myself, I'm somewhere in the middle. I know that I'm not perfect. I obviously never will be. But how do you get that emotional connection?
I can't profess to you that I have some knack or recipe for doing it. I think that if I have the presence of mind and the awareness when that opportunity comes up, that's the time. And in order
so it's like capitalizing on it.
Yeah, it's like, there's often
not capitalizing.
No, I know what you mean though. Yeah. Like there's going to be times when maybe I'm not tapped into like the emotional IQ needed to recognize that someone's suffering that day. Right? And sometimes we're suffering, but we don't have the capacity to express that suffering, right? That challenge or what's blocking us. But it's the moments in which someone is open to receive and the opposite party is open to share that those connections are made. And so being available to it is, I guess, that like first step, right? Yeah. And so I try to put myself in a position of awareness and, like probably fail more often than I succeed there, right? Because I am hard charging through life more often than not. But in order to have those like deep and meaningful connections, you can't force them, right? They have to be organic. And then when they are, they're the ones that are most fruitful.
Yeah, I think that's that's actually really, really good. I think the right time is a big component to that, because I even think about some of the deepest relationships I have with some of my best friends, right? The deep emotional connections. Most of them kind of happened on timing, whether my grandma passed away and I started hanging out with an old friend and then we got really, really close, or something traumatic happened in my life and then I started hanging out with this guy and then this happened. Like I feel like it's when people are struggling that they're pretty open to like express and I think it's easy when like someone's at the top of the world where it's just like, yes, like I don't, you feel like you don't even need that depth, because you're like, I'm here, man, I'm present, I'm like, this is perfect. But it's on the tough days when you're like, damn, wish I had someone to just, hear me out a little bit. So that's really, really good advice. I like that timing piece. I also think that breaking down your own walls is powerful as well. Like, I think it's really hard for someone to open up and get deep emotionally with someone when this person is like, their walls are up.
Absolutely.
Right?
You got to, I think
so you have to like admit your fault or
vulnerability, right? I think if you were, as you're talking, I'm seeing, and I'm thinking, is there a way? And yes, you can give space for these things to happen, but ultimately there has to be in understanding that the person's already provided some vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right. If I express to you some vulnerability, you're willing to open up to me in kind. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I'm perfect, sterling everything,
yeah,
you're going to be far less willing to share with me your warts.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But once we know that we're really just, you know, we have more in common. We have more in common in our defects than we do in our virtues.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And once that we know the other person has those defects as well, then we're willing to open up to them.
Yeah.
And so when we can find space, whether it's in our businesses and our daily lives, to share those vulnerabilities and have those like language of the heart discussions, that's when these things can come up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's super, super cool. And did you have any leaders that specifically stood out to you, that were like pretty vulnerable people?
For sure.
Yeah. That you had really, really good relationships with.
Yeah.
I think that's, I mean, as a leader, that's awesome because you know this person will be there for you. And then as an employee, it's awesome as well because you're working for more than just a paycheck at that point, right? Yeah. You're working for someone you care about. You're like executing on a mission and someone else's vision that you're just as invested in because you emotionally care about that person. You know, you're not just coming to the job to get through an 8-hour shift.
Just just dig a hole or paint a line.
You gotta be working for more than a paycheck.
There's definitely a need for meaning in our work. Yeah. And there's a recent study. It's really interesting to me that over 70% of people, they report that they are less effective in their role than they could be. And part of that reason is that they profess to be distracted, and they're distracted with personal problems that come into work. And what's interesting to me though is it's just like people don't have anywhere to go, right? Mm-hmm. We're like bottled up as people, and life's difficult, life is hard, but we're all we're in it together. So
I feel like it's also people get more distracted now and more wrapped up in random problems now than the amount of brain power. I saw this thing, Josh Dobbs, Minnesota Vikings quarterback.
Oh yeah.
I saw
the astronaut.
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
Yeah,
it's been great, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Even last Sunday's loss by 1 point wasn't the worst loss we've ever endured, right? It was still pretty good.
Yeah. But I saw this thing where like it was crazy the amount of brain power I've given to this. But I can't stop thinking about it. It was like Jada Pinkett Smith, who has alopecia.
Yeah.
Thinks that Josh Dobbs might be faking his alopecia.
No. Is that a thing?
Yeah, but then like it's funny how many times that stuck with me. I read that like tweet one day and it stuck with me, and now I've like let it take up all this brain. I'm like, why am I letting that distract me? And I've noticed too that like just energy wise, like I try to wake up. I used to wake up and go on my phone for about 15, 20 minutes, wake up, then take a shower.
Oh, you do the scroll.
It's honestly,
yeah.
I've been analyzing my days, and like the powerful days are the ones where I get up and go straight to the shower and get out of the house.
Love it.
If I start the day with this like distracted kind of thing, I seem to I'd be distracted. It's like a whole lingering effect with me all day.
Absolutely.
I can't shake it.
Yeah.
And now it's like a rule of mine where I wake up and I just have to go straight to the shower. Even though I'm way tired.
Yeah.
But
that morning routine is that's what they talk about. Everyone that's a high performer that I've read about has a waking and an end day routine. They bookend their day, and they seldom waver from those routines because they're so pivotal in the success of each day. Yeah. Obviously, you have a good day and another good day and another good day. You start stacking that up. The compound effect of multiple good days is substantial.
Yeah, and everyone's good day looks different. I think
everyone's wins.
Yeah, that's kind of it. Do you have any like sort of daily routines that you do?
For sure, yeah. I'm fairly undisciplined, but I do have some like go-tos. So I like to start my day with exercise immediately. I don't look like it right now. I'm a little above my fighting weight. But exercise is just exactly where I want to start the day. So my daily routine when it's optimized, I'll start with like a really brisk walk with the rucksack on the treadmill while I read, right? I want to compound that. So eventually I have to put the book down, but as I warm up for about the first 10 minutes, I'm reading. So I'm reading something I'm interested in. So I'm getting some mental inspiration, motivation, and then I'm getting that heart rate up. And then I walk with about 35 pound rucksack. And then once I break a sweat, I keep going, and then I lift some heavy weights, and then I'm done, right? On days where I can spend some time actually lingering in the gym, I find that when I can couple physical exercise, like I have a whiteboard in the gym. Sometimes I'll have my phone there, obviously, and I'll write down, because a lot comes to me. There's like some crazy creative moments that happen while I'm simultaneously exercising.
I love that.
Yeah, so like I try to use that moment of time. I block out in my calendar. If you looked at it on my Google Calendar, there's about a 2-hour period from 5:30 to 7:30 I call creative hours. And if I want to use those however I want, right? So 7 days a week, 5:30 to 7:30, I'm in a space of mind where from like a brainwave standpoint, I'm the most creative, right? I can do my highest level of problem solving. If I need to answer emails, I'm going to answer the most of them, the most effective and more quickly in a 5:30 to 7:30 time span than I will any other time of the day. So I try to stay away from email after 9 o'clock. The only thing I do with email generally is to answer quick ones or throw them away so they're clean at the start of a day.
Yeah.
So I try to do a lot of email management, because what I found is I was addicted to email for like a decade.
The people have said this.
Yeah.
Like this email addiction, like it's like a social network for some people.
Yeah, I learned that I was addicted to email. It's kind of a sad story, but I'll tell you it anyhow, right? Because it's real. A friend of mine died. He overdosed. And a lot of people came over to our house that day, and I had a bunch of friends there, and we were mourning the passing of a close and dear friend of ours. And I sat down at my kitchen table, and I opened up my computer and started answering email. And I looked out at the porch where everyone was sitting, and we're consoling one another, we're sharing stories, we're laughing, we're crying, and I'm in there answering email, and I thought, oh wow, right? Yeah. No different than a bottle, no different than a drug. It's providing me escape from the reality of what's happening right there. Yeah. And I had that presence of mind, and I realized that I had an issue. And then I also started looking at what email, its purpose, its intended purpose as a communication device, and how it can be like abused and misused. And I tried to just start putting some rules around it. But it's been like a 3-year journey of like having a healthy relationship with email and work. So yeah, that's super. I've never had that email addiction. I'm really good at turning it off, and stuff like that. But I can understand the side of like social media, and I've definitely gone through my highs and lows with being slightly addicted to social media. In the sense that I just sometimes you just can't get off of it. Like if I'll post in a day, I'll check that post so many times throughout the day, whether it's Bloom or whatever. Or like even like our team will be posting, and I'll know something's getting posted at 4, and like I'll check it and like just be obsessed with it. It's crazy, right? The vanity metrics.
Yeah, and then what I find is like I don't spend enough time alone in my own thoughts that I feel like I'm constantly in this like rat race, or this like my brain is constantly stimulated, so I never really get time to like meditate and like process problems.
And you deserve that.
And stuff like that. Yeah, and not only do I deserve it, but sometimes I need it. Sometimes I need to just like, there's this like problem that's been lingering, I mean, there isn't like any specific problem, but like if there's a problem that's been lingering, sometimes I do a lot when I'm driving. Showers, meditative space. I love that you said the gym, because the gym is too, but I go to the gym at such a peak time that like I'm kind of like can get into that phase for like a minute, and then I got to like be like, oh, this person needs the machine, and I got to or whatever. But I've really been focusing on that, is like understanding that, because some days it's like I'll wake up, I'll go the entire day, I'll like work, then after I'll hang out with some friends, and then I'll come home and I'll watch YouTube, and then I'll sit on social media and then go to bed. And it's like my brain never stopped thinking.
Yeah. Have you heard of the author John C. Maxwell?
Yeah.
So John, he has written probably more books on leadership than anyone else, right? Prolific author, but he has a thinking chair, right? There's a few things he does every day. Every day he files something, right?
Files.
File something, right? It's
What does that mean?
like he
Like a filing
organizes
cabinet?
thoughts, he organizes quotes, he organizes things. Every day he files something. But he has a thinking chair. He spends a certain amount of time just thinking.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's in meditative practice, right? Like if we just allow ourselves space, like I think it's incredible what can happen in 10 minutes. So, you know, I learned a meditation practice, and again, I said earlier, I'm pretty undisciplined with things, right? But like I have this like wonderful opportunity to reach into this like kit of tools that I've been privileged to pick up, and one of them is transcendental meditation. I was taught TM by a guy back in like 2011 or something, and his name was Joseph. And Joseph had taught thousands of people TM, and TM is just a wonderful way to meditate, and it's very simple, right? Yeah. And
I love simple.
What's that?
I love simple.
Yeah, and
I hate when it's
be.
like, this is what you got to do, and you got to do this, this.
And the funny thing about human beings is we're built to meditate. A lot of us think we have to do something, but it's inherently within us. The ability, like when we say we can't do it, we just haven't done it. Like we are built to meditate. That's why you don't need to buy anything.
Yeah.
You know, you can't bottle it. You can't prescribe. Well, you could prescribe it, but like it's not for sale. But we all have the skill, the ability, and it comes maybe not naturally, but it's a practice, right? It's a discipline. It's a practice. When I allow myself that opportunity, when I give space for that practice in my life, my ability to problem solve, my ability to think, my ability to respond to the outside, you know, stuff that's thrown at us on a daily basis changes significantly and for the positive.
To add to that, I feel like the ability to connect as well is huge.
Absolutely.
Like for me, sometimes it'll take me like in bed in my own thoughts thinking like, oh my gosh, when I talked to my friend today, he was trying to express he had this problem. And I was so wrapped up in just like doing what I was doing. And now like I got to call him tomorrow and like make sure, you know, it's like sometimes it literally takes you like after the fact to figure that out. And
but you have the presence of mind to realize that. So that's, I mean, kudos to you.
But you do need to, I feel like it's harder than ever now though to get into that.
Fair. I would agree. I would agree.
It's tough. It's tough. But no, that's all really good stuff. And it's funny that you say you're undisciplined with it. And I think I love the simplicity of that philosophy too. Because I don't know, I'm huge on simplicity. Just like the simpler it can be, the better. I just started like dieting and I've never done a diet in my life.
Okay.
But I wanted to do a diet just to kind of rebuild a relationship with food and understand things.
Love it.
And I start doing all this research and it's like, you can do keto, but you have to go to this specific grocery store and you can do this diet and this diet. And I ended up settling on intermittent fasting.
Perfect.
Because it's easy.
Yeah.
I just don't eat between 8 p.m. and noon, and I can eat between noon and 8 p.m.
Yeah.
It's like
your feeding window.
Yeah.
My wife is
16 hours off, 8 hours on. She does it?
Well, she doesn't even call them diets. It's just a way of eating.
Yeah.
See, it's funny because like the word diet, right, has a connotation, right? Like what happens when you stop?
Yeah.
See, but if you have a way of eating, it's just a discipline. It's just a simple way to eat. And if you eat with the way you eat is in a set parameter of time, wonderful. But yeah, that intermittent fasting, I've had wonderful success with it.
Yeah.
And it feels so natural. What it did for me when I fasted on a regular and routine basis, I had a better presence of mind about what I was consuming. I would still give myself license to like have the cookie or the ice cream from time to time, right? But I was more intentional about the consumption of the food that I did have because I had a limited amount of time to get what I knew I needed in the form of like protein or healthy fats or whatever. Yeah. And so it was a really helpful way to give structure to a way of eating.
Yeah. And I think it's, I don't know, I've even found myself being like a little bit clearer.
Nice.
Up in the head a little bit. And that's why I just urge anyone, like, if there is a little change you can make, like, just try it, you know.
Yeah, you
try
got
it for a week.
Ketones working for you, man. That's fuel. Brain fuel.
Yeah.
For real, brain fuel. Yeah.
What do you mean ketones?
So like when you're fasting, right? Your body is, I'm not a food scientist or whatever, but like my rudimentary understanding is that when we fast, right? And by fasting, eventually you end up in a state of ketosis and your body is then burning fat for fuel. And that's what your brain wants. See?
Yeah.
Now the brain, if it gets carbs, it's going to get addicted to carbs. And that's this quick fast, like crack cocaine for fuel. You don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
There's no essential carbs, right? But if we're burning fat that's within our body, these are like ketones or something like that. So anyhow, you can do the search, get into the rabbit hole, but there's some great people that I've listened to on that topic, a bunch of them, whether it's like Dave Asprey, Gary Brecka, I think Huberman, all their podcasts, they'll talk about this, like the powers of fasting and cold plunging and all this wonderful stuff.
I'm into it right now. I actually saw, there's this new study, and last thing on fasting, but there's this study where there's a 72-hour fast.
For sure.
I guess it's really hard to do. Have you heard about this?
I have, and it seems intense.
It's intense. But they say your chances of cancer go down by like 70%.
I mean, I think it's
because your body eats the cancer cells, like, which is what you're talking about. Like, it eats the fat it has in its storages and the cells it has in its storages, but it ends up eating those like dead cells.
Wow. Or
those cells that it hasn't had to eat that have just been. I don't know.
I swear I saw a picture of Dana White on a 72-hour water fast. Dude was shredded.
Yeah.
Dude, I need a few 72-hour fasts though, for real.
but no, I think that's crazy. There's actually science to back it, and
for sure.
And it works.
Yeah.
It's
interesting for sure.
It is super interesting. Real quick, I mean, because you want to check what time it is? My phone's over there.
Yeah. What we got? Oh, dude, we're killing it.
We good on time?
We're 3:30.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I think the last thing that I want to talk about is just this idea of building a better life for your employees. I just want to really quickly talk through, like, if you have any examples of that kind of stuff. Do you have any examples like that?
Wow. I think the first several years at MNRC, right, has been a journey to like establish a foothold, right? And now moving forward, it's exactly what you just described, right? I want to start to think about and put into action opportunities for a better life for everyone, right? Whether you're on the sales side of the business or whether you're on the operations side of the business, if you work at or with MNRC, I want to find a way to empower and transform their life. And these are incremental steps, right? They're not like one explosive pow, here it is, transformation, right? It's not like Superman in the phone booth. But like there's certainly more that can be done, and it's a commitment and ultimately a responsibility, and one that I continually look at. What can we do? What makes sense for the business and for the people first and foremost. So it's a journey, and it's been a real privilege to have come this far this quickly, and then I recognize that privilege is ultimately a responsibility. Then otherwise it'll just slip through my fingers, and it's a lot of times we see this, right, where businesses they pop up, they flourish, and then all of a sudden they go away. And I'm hoping to build something that's long lasting.
Yeah, and that's huge. Do you ever find that like pop you talked about, like business shows up, it pops, it flourishes? I think, even though it's at completely different levels, I feel like Bloom has had, similar that feeling, right? Yeah. How do you ensure that you're growing like the right way? Ooh. And not like just growing super fast? Because I talked with a friend of mine, and he was really expressing to me, and he's been in the business for years, and he was saying, he is always been focused on growing intentionally.
I love it.
And was initially focused on growing as fast as possible, and now I'm kind of like taking a step back.
I love it. That's a great question.
Yeah. What do you think? I mean, do you think there's any issues with that? Is there anything you should be mindful of? Anything that you've experienced?
Yeah. I think I have to be cautious personally about sticking to a primary purpose. Understanding what you do well, and learning how to double down on that. So, I mean, there's sometimes I sit there and be like, oh, roofing and siding, is that a one-trick pony? And what are the verticals to it? And, understanding, where is the scalability? And, like how can we make a larger impact, whether it be in this market or another, without diverting from the primary purpose? You got to understand, like,
true.
people, like, companies are good at certain things, right? Like Apple doesn't do, I don't know, right? Doesn't do clothing,
Yeah.
And Lululemon doesn't do phones.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they know what their primary purpose is, and they stick with that. And I think that's really important. But at the same time, then you got to look for, well, how am I going to like compound this momentum that I have? And that's something that kind of keeps me up at night sometimes, is I realize like, oh, we have momentum, we have synergy, we have inertia, it's happening. And if we don't continually harness that, right, eventually it'll slow down. How do we prevent a slowdown? And when you said grow the right way, it like thought into my mind, how are you going to know?
You
right?
don't.
That's
the one thing is you never know what you're doing. Like I still to this day don't know what I'm doing.
I love Ray Dalio's version of this, right? Like he says, hey, success for a lot of us looks like this, right? Like success, trial, error, back to success, but he's like, no, it's more of like this.
Yeah.
Right. And if you read his book Principles,
come back.
Yeah, he has that whole little picture of the curly Q, and he says, oh, you're having success, and then you're learning, and you're going backwards, and then bam, you shoot up again, and it's not so static, right? It's different than what we might think. And here we're talking about a guy with like 50, 60 years working the markets. So he's seen trends of the markets, which is essentially trends of business. So that book, Principles, is really an incredible, it's about that thick, man. Yeah. It's a big, thick one. I haven't finished. It just sits on the nightstand, and every once in a while I throw some pages, but his insight and the way that he's run his business and what he's endured through not endured, but what he's persevered through as a businessman for many decades is really an incredible testament to a lot of different things. Not only him as a person, but how to operate a business. Yeah.
I think I love what you said at the start too, of just like referring back to your vision. Like at Bloom, we exist to give brands, companies, and foundations a voice.
Love it.
That's our thing, right? And to be honest, right, thinking about growing intentionally, I look back at projects that maybe we took that didn't bleed that vision out. It wasn't giving them a voice. It was, this pays really well, so let's take this, and that, I think referring back to the vision and realizing, hey, does this play into the vision? It's a simple question, yes or no. If it doesn't, then don't do it. And then you're actually growing intentionally.
Yeah, that's powerful, right?
Or Glenn always talks about, we have this 10-year BHAG, 10-year goal, and ours is called the Jeep moment. And it's when we're on set filming like a Jeep commercial.
Nice.
10 years from now. So, same concept, right? Take projects, build towards that moment, right? And yeah, I think that's really, really good to ensure that you don't just implode, right? Because Apple could make $5 billion tomorrow if they started the clothing line. I'm sure a bunch of people would go out and buy it, right?
Yeah.
But like, it would then discount their phones and their Apple and their actual like products, right? They like stick to their vision and their one thing. So that's a great example. Yeah. Well, that's super good, Dan. Honestly, I think we've covered a lot here.
Have we covered all the territory? I'm not ready to stop, Chase. This is so much fun.
I know. I love chatting.
Season 2, episode 1.
Season 2, episode 1.
We'll get some more going.
Yeah, for real. Where can the people find you? Or what do you want to shout out right now?
What do I want to shout out?
Yeah.
Dude, so many, man. You just mentioned Glenn, and like, he's such a sage. He's really, he's awesome. And, Glenn Dahl at Apex North, he just does some incredible work. His experience as a CEO, I can't quote the reason he exists, but it's incredible. It's something to the effect that, no CEO feels as alone as he did.
I think that is it.
It's something to that effect, but it's obviously more polished and even more powerful.
Yeah.
And but I love connecting with him.
Yeah.
I get so much out of that. And so I'd give a shout out to Glenn, who helped connect us. You helped to connect me to him.
Yep.
So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because he's been absolutely pivotal in helping to guide the thinking of MNRC, right? And so I appreciate you connecting me with him.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
And I mean, I would also say that, like, if anyone is listening to this podcast that feels like they're between a rock and a hard place, or they're struggling and they don't know what their identity is, I mean, I would love, don't email Dan, but maybe just comment below or something and we can get you connected. Because he, honestly, like, I think you are, like, such just a, I don't know what it is, but like, you have this, like, presence about you that's not intimidating, that is still, like, powerful, this, like, powerful yet not overly intimidating.
Well,
like,
thank you, Chase.
scary, kind of
flattering.
But I think that, like, I don't know, if someone has this accounting job they hate,
yeah, no, you
they want to try knocking doors for summer. There's
a careers tab on the MNRC
INC.com
page. So
that's where you go.
If you're looking to empower and transform your life and take your career to the next level, just visit MNRCINC.com, find the careers tab and fill out the form and ask to talk with me. Say you saw the podcast on Bloom and then ask to talk with Dan and we'll go from there.
That would be super powerful. And I just, like, I don't know, you just have really, really good people around you too.
For sure. That's what it's about, man.
I was working out the other day and all of a sudden I look up and there's Josh.
Oh,
and Josh comes up, he's like, "What's up, dude? What's up?" And I was like, with my friend who's, like, kind of my trainer. So I was like, he was kind of giving me that look, like, we got to get back to it, dude. Yeah, we got to get back to it. So, and Josh can talk forever. So I was like, "What up? Peace out, bro." And then kind of let him go. But dude, thank you so much for just being a part of this whole journey.
It's been incredible. Thank you.
It's crazy to think that, like, 3 years ago until now, all this has happened. Wow. So yeah,
I'm so happy for your success.
Let's keep growing together.
Absolutely.
Likewise,
Let's do it, man.
Awesome.
Let's do it.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Season 2, episode 1. Dan Lillestol.
Thanks for having me.
Super excited.
All right. Peace.